So just a bit of housekeeping items. Everyone will be on mute as soon as they enter into the room. No pressure, feel free to put your camera on if you feel comfortable. It's good to see people's faces. I know that in a normal panel setting, we would see your faces anyway, but no pressure, I totally understand. But we're also going to make this as interactive as possible. I am someone who wants to engage with the audience, and I want to make sure you feel that you're also engaging to get the most out of this session. So two things. One, we'll be doing prescribed Q&A to make sure that we're answering some questions we know are hot topics, but if you have specific questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. You can either put it to everyone or to me or to Samantha, and we'll make sure that we get it read, and we'll have one of the panelists actually respond to it. Also, when we come to a point, if we're able to have even some more free-flowing Q&A, feel free to either raise your hand and you can take yourself off mute and ask your question in live and in person. So thank you guys all for joining. We're really excited to have our first Lubin Alumni Committee led panel with some awesome alumni that we have for you today. What we're going to do is a couple things. We really want to make sure that we know we're going to do some introductions, making sure you understand the panelists' areas of expertise and how you can ask specific questions. Our goal is to make sure that the questions we have already prepared are really going to share those practical tips and tricks of navigating a job search, how to stand out, what you need to do, and making sure you're really making the most of that effort. The other thing that we want to do is we're going to give some job market update, both from our subject matter expert on the panel, as well as PACE's career services we have represented as well. And they can share some of the resources that you can actually leverage as a PACE alumni. So without further ado, I will introduce myself first. I'm Gabriella Ferrara. I'm the moderator of this panel. I'm a class of 2016 Lubin grad. I'm currently our Vice President of Regional Sales for Scorpion. We're a full digital marketing agency, and I focus on the franchise space. I actually left the Big Four during the pandemic and switched to this new job in October of 2020. So I've also just went through this process, and I'm happy to help and answer any questions. I'm excited to have you guys. So from there, we'll pass it over to Alex Osten.
Thanks, Gabby. I'm Alex. I am a Lubin alumni from 2015. I have had 2 job changes over the pandemic. One was due to a layoff, and one was because the job I found after that layoff wasn't the right fit. So we'll be talking about finding the right fit as well today. I'm currently the leader of Sprinkler's Advertising Partnership Channels program. We are an enterprise SaaS platform in the customer experience space. Feel free to check us out. It's a really cool company. Should I hand it over to Matt, Gabby? All right, take it away, Matt.
Or hand it over to Phyllis.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. It's so wonderful to see everyone. I'm Phyllis Mooney. I am the Executive Director for Career Services here at Pace University. I'm coming on 10 years here. Wow, I cannot believe that. I joined Pace 10 years ago from Wall Street. I am an attorney by trade. And I had after spending a few years in private practice in my home state of New Jersey, I spent over 20 years on Wall Street working in the insurance industry. It was quite a surprise to me to wind up in higher education and career services because I wasn't even in the human resources area. So I will share with you a little bit later about how I was able to leverage all of my experience and the skills that I had acquired throughout my career to make this wonderful and very fulfilling career here at Pace University. So welcome everyone, and I see Matt. I'm going to now turn it over to Matt.
Great, apologies, I froze out a little bit. Apparently I'm the veteran of this distinguished panel. So a little bit about myself. I'm a graduate of Lubin School, MBA 2002. I'm somewhat of a unicorn. I've held HR, human resource, and business operations functions in a number of different industries. Currently, I'm running a consulting firm, but I'm the SME on this call because I've probably hired well over 1,000 people in my time, and can give you the insider view on what hiring managers are looking for and how applications really get selected. So I'll be sharing some of those tips as we go along in the panel.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. And Heather, are you on audio? I know that it seems like she's trying to connect. She's our last panelist. I'm not sure if she dialed in. If you are, just unmute yourself. If not, I might just do her intro for her. All right. So Heather is our recent grad. She graduated this past year in 2020. She has a dual degree, if I'm not mistaken, both from the Lubin Business School as well as Seidenberg from computer science perspective. She currently works at Microsoft as a business engineer, and she has had a very interesting background working at some of the large banks as well, and then ultimately getting her job in Microsoft. But she had offers from several other big tech firms, which she'll share later on in the call. So we're excited to have her as well. I'll kick it over to Matt. As he said, he's going to be our SME for today, and he's really going to talk about, just at a high level, some of the job market updates about what he's seeing right now that's going on. And so, Matt, if you'd like to take it away.
Sure. So, obviously 2021 has been the worst year to find a job. Just to put it in context, the economy lost about 20 million jobs just over about 4 months. Job postings right now are about 20% lower than what they were 2 years ago. Companies are taking longer to hire, one, because there's more applicants there. Companies are still figuring out the virtual interview process, and there's budget issues. Some companies don't know how long they're going to be in business for. Now, there is some good news, right? So there was just a report that came out from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics that said that the economy is going to add 30 million jobs over the course of 8 years. So it's going to replace the jobs that are already lost and add about 7 or 8 million more jobs over the next couple of years, which is good, right? So that's positive. So anyone that thinks that there's not going to be enough jobs out there, there's going to be jobs. Then you have to really peel back the onion and say whether it's going to be in the industries that you're actually looking for. The growing industries are still the same industries that have been, the growth industries over the past 5 years. Healthcare, obviously, for an aging population, and of course, due to the pandemic, technology, education, and then business professional services. Unfortunately, for some of the financial individuals on this call, the financial sector is actually supposed to contract over the next 10 years. And we'll see how that plays out, particularly in New York City. Obviously, the focus of today's panel is, for most part, is to find a job today, right? So knowing that there's going to be more jobs in 8 years really doesn't factor into how people live today. So let me give you two tips as a former hiring manager that are really relevant today, but they've always been relevant, no matter if you're out of work for 2 weeks or 2 years. So the first is, if you've been out of work because of the pandemic, right? Take ownership of that and have a unique story to tell. Right. And I say this to even college grads. What did you do over the summer? Nothing. Okay, well, that's not what I really want to hear. Come up with something that you've actually done. So even if you were laid off during the pandemic, come up with a story that says that you tried to improve something about your professional skills. Now, everyone has a unique story that they've been let go during the pandemic. Take ownership of that, but say, here's what I did about it, right? Because at the end of the day, hiring managers want you to know that you put effort into something, because if you're putting effort into the job search, you're going to put effort into work, right? So it's okay that you've been out of work, but you got to come up with a story to say what you've been doing. It could be you were taking care of someone that was sick, you were working on your skills, you were changing jobs. Do something. If if the main thing has been watching, Netflix, there's probably a good chance that you're not going to get the job right off the bat. But if you said that you were doing certain things related to improving yourself, hiring manager will gloss over the fact that there's a gap, in your resume. I think the other important thing to note is, and this is probably the most important thing, is employers don't want to hire victims. They just don't. They want to hire superheroes. They want to hire people that are going to say, I'm going to change this job. I'm going to revolutionize. I'm going to make your job as my boss the easiest that you've ever been. They don't want to hire victims. And if you're showing that through either your resume or through the interview process, there's going to be a good chance that you don't get the job. So show that you've actually, accomplished things during the worst period of, economic loss in our lifetime, and how you're going to make, the company better if they hire you. So that's the first piece. The second piece is, be very strategic about your job search. The old spray and pray theory doesn't work. Applying to every job for whatever reason and then just hoping that some applicant tracking system is going to pick you up really doesn't work. Target 10 to 20 companies within, certain industries and really mine those companies, right? Get on LinkedIn, find people that work there, have them introduce you to people, start cold call, and going back to the old ages of cold calling people and saying, I really need a job. I know about your company. I know about this role. Can you at least look at my resume, or find someone that could take your resume and show it off to someone else in the company? That always works no matter what the situation is, whether there's abundance of jobs or a shortage of jobs. Concentrate on a specific company or industry, and then just kind of data mine and target going through there. You'll have much more success than just applying through Indeed or online pretty much blindly. So I know we're going to get into some personal situations of people on the panel, but I just wanted to leave these two, macro tips for you, which hopefully will be useful. Have a story about why you've been out of work, and be very specific in your job search.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love those nuggets. I think the good thing is that, with all the things that have happened in the past year, I think there's going to be a lot of good that comes out of it too, and everyone can get stronger and better. So thank you for sharing that. Just so people know, I've seen people's questions start coming to the chat. I'll make sure that they get addressed as we start doing the Q&A in a little bit. But I do want Phyllis to give some insights on how PACE's career services are actually there for alumni. And if people didn't know that, we're going to share with you the ways that you can connect with them even post your time at PACE.
Thank you so much, Gabriella. So yeah, when the pandemic hit, we saw a sudden change in job and internship postings. It just stopped in a minute. So what we did as a team, we have our career counselors, plus we have a team of employer developers. What we did is we started to hit the phones and hit the emails. And we called all of our employers, anybody who'd been on campus that past year, anybody who had a fresh posting on our platform, all of our employers who hired our students and recent grads over the past year. We called them up, we asked them what's going on. How has this pandemic immediately affected you? And also, just to check in on them, so we're partners in this. How can we be there for you? We learned a lot. We got a lot of market intelligence that way. People were just very hungry for connection, to share. They also wanted to know from us the impacts of what we were hearing from their competitors, what we were hearing from other industries. We called all of our students. The good news there was most of our students were able to take their internships and they were able to go remote with them. So that was fantastic, except for those students who were obviously in the performing arts and in the hospitality and tourism industries. So those were the industries that were most disrupted. So after we spent a few weeks making all of those phone calls to really get a pulse on what's going in our PACE, we call it our PACE economy. It's our micro economy. We started to hit the external job boards. We knew what was going on with our job boards, but what did Indeed's job boards look like? What about LinkedIn? What about the more specific job boards? And we assigned members of the team, and we just got obsessed with them. We checked them all day, every day, and see who was posting and what were they posting. And if we didn't already have a relationship with them, then we reached out to them, connected with them, and built a relationship so we can get those jobs and internships at PACE. What we found, and continues to be the case, and everything, the markets are opening up. As Matt was sharing, the market is opening up, right? We're recovering. The opportunities were and continue to be in healthcare, technology, education. So a lot of opportunity in government, nonprofits. So those were the trend. And what we were advising students was to follow the demand, right? To follow the demand. A lot of our students at PACE really had their hearts set on arts, entertainment, and management, arts, entertainment, and media, hospitality and tourism. Students really love those sexy industries, right? We're telling them, we're not telling you to give up on your dreams, but you want to keep moving. You don't want to stay still. You don't want to wait to work until the job markets open up again, and the precise opportunities that you want are become available again. You want to develop skills. You want to keep moving. You want to build relationships, and who knows, you may even actually like it. So, I've, personally, I survived 9/11 and then the financial crisis of 2008. I was right in the heart of it. I was working for AIG. We'll get past this, and getting through this, you just get stronger, greater resilience. I echo what Matt says. I had a 5-month gap between Wall Street and this position. It is, you have to work on other skills, right? You work on your story, you keep moving forward, build your network, continue, build greater relationships. And one thing that worked for me was know your brand, know your value proposition. When I was on Wall Street, I was a senior vice president of product development group. And, in the insurance industry. So that's a very, very specific job. But what I had acquired, I acquired lots of skills in project management, ideation, managing people, learning about other industries. I had to do a lot of soul searching to really find that story, define those transferable skills, and I put them out in the universe, and I did it fearlessly. This is my value proposition. This is what I'm really good at. This is what I'm looking to do. It doesn't have to be in insurance. It doesn't need to be in finance. It could be in any industry. I'm looking to solve really hard problems, innovate, and really contribute to an organization that is going to the next level. Kind of put it out there in the universe, and then this opportunity came. I didn't even know about these. Higher ed was never on my radar. In fact, I think when I was in college, I don't even know if we had a career services department. But it was because I had a really great network, and I put it out there, and I knew my value proposition. That really made the difference. And that is my bit of advice to you.
Love it. So as you can see, we actually added in the chat, Career Services has been hosting Career Services for Alumni kind of series throughout this past year. There's a way to register, and you can get on all of them. They have cross-industry, awesome people have been joining. I highly recommend, if you aren't aware, make sure you sign up at least to get the reminders and email notifications. Follow Career Services on LinkedIn. And lastly, we have a dedicated career service alumni resource. Her email is right there, Marilyn Kaufman. I didn't know this until I was putting together this panel. It exists. So take advantage of it. You know, that's the benefit of being a PACE alum. We have all these resources. But just to wrap up what Phyllis said, you know, I think following the demand right now, knowing your value prop, being able to craft a story of yourself, I think are the biggest takeaways from there. So now, without further ado, we're going to go into Q&A. I also know that there's some people that did join us, just some housekeeping items. Feel free to put a question if you have for the panelists in the chat. You can either chat it to everyone or me or Samantha. We'll make sure that we get it answered. Also, if you want, you can also raise your hand and then we'll make sure that you're unmuted and you can actually ask your question live. So just before we start going. So the first thing I know is, between Alex and I, we actually just both started new jobs. So I'd say, you know, for Alex, kind of, you know, when did you recently start your new job? I know you teased it out initially, and kind of really share your experience of like, what were some of the challenges navigating that job search, but also what are the things that really helped you think, further along your job search?
Yeah, those are great questions. I'll try to answer all of them. So I actually started my new job 3 weeks ago. I will say, if anyone is starting a new job, you know, just take it one day at a time. It's very overwhelming, especially when you pivot. And in my role, I did pivot. I think pivoting is probably something we should discuss today. It ties along very well with what Matt, Phyllis, and Gabby were saying around bringing a relevant skill set to whatever is next. Oh, thanks, Phyllis. To whatever is next in your career. I think having transferable skills and being able to highlight them and create a narrative is really helpful in today's job search. For me personally, as I mentioned earlier, I was laid off right at the beginning of COVID. For me, being a younger alumni and earlier in my career, it was very hard for me to not take my layoff personally, thinking I had done something wrong or that I didn't add value back to my organization. In fact, in one quarter, I added 10% revenue to our bottom line. And without me, the company's profitability would be far less than where it was. So I knew it wasn't me, it wasn't personal, it was a business decision. And I took all of my hard work with me on my job search. With that, I wanted to be really thoughtful when looking. So similar to what Matt was saying, don't just apply to everything under the sun. Look for where you see, maybe you don't align with every item line by line in the job description, but for the majority, you can see yourself in the role, you have the skill set. I think it's very easy to eliminate a job from your search based on missing one or two criteria. Sometimes there's skills you can learn, and maybe there's somewhere you might need to take a class online and just re-educate yourself to make you a more attractive candidate. I'm trying to remember all your questions, Gabby. Something that I think was really helpful in the job search is practice your interview. So I've had a lot of friends and PACE acquaintances reaching out to me really recently who are looking to pivot and start a new job. And my advice to them is, let's have a dialogue quickly. And you tell me why you're looking to make a change. Why are you looking, you know, at this role? And how do you see yourself adding value? And maybe half the time they can't answer that. So you want to be really thoughtful and, you know, learn how to position yourself. You can practice in a mirror, you can talk to a friend, talk about why the role interests you, because if you do make it along in the recruitment process, those questions are going to come up. Another thing that's really helpful is send your resume around to peers, because 9 out of 10 times they might find something you missed in there, and they might have a recommendation or suggestion for rephrasing something or looking at something in a different lens. Of course, you can reach out to career service at PACE. But you could also, something I did is ask for informationals. When I saw a role at a company that was attractive to me, I looked for someone in a similar position on LinkedIn. I reached out, I said, hey, I saw this role, it's really interesting, I could see myself in it. I'd love to learn more from you about why you love your role, and kind of how you were able to, you know, make it into this role. people won't always be gracious with their time and respond, but when they do, you can have really meaningful conversations that will help prepare you. And quite frequently, they'll offer to look at your resume and perhaps share it with a recruiter. Having a referral internally is going to make it more likely that you'll make it along in the recruitment process. I don't want to hog up the time here, Gabby. Am I missing anything?
Nope, that was awesome. I'll share just a tidbit because I think you tapped on it. LinkedIn. I think that LinkedIn is so powerful. It is so important nowadays. It is especially now in this virtual era of not having those in-person networking events, LinkedIn is the first time someone will see you. It's the first time when someone searches your name, that is their imprint of you. And now, almost like a resume, LinkedIn is the exact same impact. It's either going to have all the meat and you could get to understand this person, or it's not. And my saying personally, especially just because I'm in a sales role, is if you're not on LinkedIn, you should be. I think that if you're not on LinkedIn at this day and age, I always question that situation, just personally. And what I found is, be active. Show your value prop on your LinkedIn page. Share what your skills are, like Phyllis said. What are your transferable skills? Mine is go-to-market, relationship building, and I could do that for any company. Build it out as if it was your resume, and make sure that everything you do, even if it's not work related, if it's volunteering, if you sit on nonprofit boards, if you do anything, it really gets you to understand more about you as an individual and what you have to offer. So I would say that's actually, between being very active on LinkedIn and also just active in real world when I go to conferences and trade shows, that's actually how I got my job. I was poached and was reached out directly on LinkedIn by someone who was in my same industry. And just because they said, I've seen your face, I've seen you pop up on LinkedIn, and we want to have a conversation. So I would say my biggest advice is, I'm a huge advocate for LinkedIn. And, I'm happy. I always say, please connect with me, and I'm happy to even give you a look over on your LinkedIn. I've learned a lot over the past few years, 5 years, as it's even evolved continuously. I'm happy to give some pointers. So I'd say that's something that's super important.
And if I may add, Gabby, real quick, yeah. If you are in the heat of your job search and you might feel like it's not going the way you want it to do or to go, I would recommend subscribing to the LinkedIn job search feature. I think it's between $30 and $50 a month. Forgive me for not knowing, but it allows you the opportunity to reach out to individuals who are not in your network. So as you're starting to search for companies that look attractive to you, as you're applying on LinkedIn, it makes your profile actually stand out. So at times the investment is well worth it in the end. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I saw a question, I think super relevant, how to market yourself on LinkedIn. Few pointers. There's a top description in your LinkedIn profile. It usually says your summary, executive summary. Put in there your executive summary of you as an individual. What is your value prop and what can you do / what have you done? The other thing I would recommend too is try to set yourself up as a thought leader. I like to post content that's not necessarily, it could be related to my industry. It could be book recommendations. It could be a poll. Engage your community. That'll just kind of elevate you in terms of people seeing your profile. So those are my strong piece of advice. Lots of great articles though for you to read as well. Next one, which also goes in the frame of standing out. Matt, I'd love for you to share some nuggets on what are some practical ways that people can actually stand out, whether it's on a resume or especially right now in these virtual interviews. I'd love to hear some of those nuggets from you.
I will share that, but I'm a big fan of LinkedIn too. And I was just looking on LinkedIn. I was looking to see if anyone invited me to connect from this call, and there was one person. So kudos to that one person, but every person on this call should connect with each other, because that's where you're most likely going to find a job. And I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. I have a friend who owns a HR consulting company, and he posted a job yesterday for a consulting associate with 0 to 3 years of experience, right? So some people on this call, if you want to get into management consulting, he is not posting this job on Indeed. He is not posting this job with a recruiter. He is posting this job to his friends and his followers, and he will find a candidate for this job. And the beauty about LinkedIn is you actually see how many people applied. There's 145 people that applied in the past 3 days, and 9 people applied today. So your best chances of finding a job is probably through LinkedIn and probably someone that you've connected with. There are plenty of people on LinkedIn that I've never met. There are people that I've spoken to, and there's people that are looking to help you find a job. I think this is probably some of the more direct access, and a lot more recruiters are going directly into LinkedIn than they're looking and posting jobs on Indeed or going through paid recruiters. So if you haven't connected with people on this call, you should, and if you don't, it's very unfortunate because that's where you're going to find a job. So back to the question. I'm gonna answer this in 2 parts. The first part is more some practical tips. So obviously we talked about LinkedIn, but on your resume, everyone's tips on the resume are really important. But I think having metrics on your resume is by far the most important thing to me, because obviously if I am a hiring manager, I have metrics related to whether it's sales, revenue, whether it's how many people are going to report into you or span of control. I need to understand from you really quickly whether you're going to be able to navigate in this job, right? So if you've had sales targets and you've met them, I want to hear, tens, hundreds, thousands, millions. I want to know those metrics, because that's going to help me hone into whether you're a candidate or not. And if you don't have metrics, then I have to guess. And if I have to guess, I'm going to probably look at the next resume. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and this is a personal thing, because data confidentiality is very important to me. You do not need to put your home address on your resume at all. There's no reason why you need to do that. No company needs your home address until they actually hire you. And when they hire you, you're happy to give your home address. But during the courting process, you don't need to. Basically, all companies really need to know is where you're kind of located. So New York, or your town. Don't put your address, because you never know where that address is going to wind up, especially online. So remove that from your resume. So that's from a practical standpoint. But from a more a strategic or a mindset standpoint, you're going to think that this sounds really ludicrous, but look, I view finding a job like going on a blind date, right? Have that mindset of going on a blind date, and automatically people are like, oh, I hate dating, I hate blind dating, or I haven't dated for years and I don't know what's out there. Basically, it's a blind date, right? You are your brand. Your resume is your brand. You have to sell yourself. If you presented yourself to a blind date in a very horrible fashion, chances are there's not going to be a second date, right? So your resume is your brand. Make sure that it's clean, crisp, and make sure that when you go on that interview, that's the best representation of yourself, with the hopes of a second date. Now, the good thing about dating, and as well as looking for a job, it's not one-sided, right? I mean, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So a lot of people don't understand that. And you should, as an applicant, really be asking a lot of questions to see if this company is really a fit for you. Because the last thing you want to do is go into a role and spend 3 months and say, oh, I took the worst job ever, and now I have to go back to something I disliked in the first place and look for another job, right? So use that as the mindset, and I guarantee you're probably going to do some things differently when you approach looking for a job if you view it as, looking for a date. So those are my tips.
That's really helpful. That's really helpful. And Matt, I'd like to piggyback while you just said that, just based on one of the questions that came in, especially for, let's say, more seasoned alumni, that are maybe going back into the workforce, or they've been out, they want to kind of change it up, maybe that 50+ year demographic, 50-year-old, what are some maybe tips and tricks for that? Is it different? Is there something else that they should be thinking about when they are putting their resume together in their interview process?
Yeah, I mean, don't discount the past, right? And don't discount the people that you worked with, because a lot of the people that you worked with are probably still in the workforce. And if they had a really good experience with you, they will help you. And, and reach out to them. A lot of people want to hear from what happened to someone 10, 15, 20 years ago, and where you've progressed or what happened. So reach out to former colleagues, which goes back to the LinkedIn point. If you take a look at my LinkedIn profile, so I teeter between going as a permanent employee into companies as well as a consultant. No matter what job I've ever had, I always send referrals. And if you don't know about the referrals on LinkedIn, it's people that give you a referral, right? And usually it's, you trade off. I'll give you a referral if you give me a referral. I probably have about 30 referrals, and that's just through my entire career. And if I was a hiring manager and you sent me your resume, I immediately go in and I look and I want to see what, there's one representation of what you say, but I want to see if other people are saying the same thing. And if you have a lot of referrals that say, hey, it's a great person to work with, strategic thinker, hard worker, I mean, you get enough of those, you go, wow, okay, this person's legit. It legitimizes it. If you have no referrals, you kind of go, does this person have any friends? Or do they not know how to navigate LinkedIn or technology in general? And it really stands out because, getting back to the first point, what makes you stand out? It's all of the ancillary things. Everyone's going to submit a resume. Everyone's going to submit with metrics. You got to come up with other things that make you stand out, and having referrals does. And it's always nice to look at those, from time to time and see what people say to you, as well as paying it back and referring them. Because as I've always said to everyone that I worked with, unfortunately, I'm going to be working for a long time. And just because I may be your boss now, you may be my boss in the future, or I may need you to get me a job. And that's happened because you just never know. There is no 10, 15, 20-year lifespans in a company anymore. There's just not. It's 3 years. The lifespan of a person in a role is 3 years, which is essentially the same as in a company.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think that was really helpful across the board, honestly. Phyllis, I'd love for you to share, especially from a career services perspective. I know that especially when we were current students, they'd always do, resume workshops or those practice interviews. I'd love to hear, are there some new tips that you've been sharing with, not only students, but alumni, into how to stand out in these virtual interviews? Is there anything that practical people can be practicing or working on to make sure that that area, which might be new to most, is something that we can all take away?
Oh, absolutely. We use this phrase, it's like control your square, right? Control your square. And, Alex and Gabriella, having, not too long ago been paid students, we've really raised the bar and do lots and lots of events. We have these, these big career fairs and boutique fairs. Last year, before the pandemic, we hosted 13 career fairs on campus, right? So we had to take all of that, and we did. We were able to replicate that through virtual platforms, which I'm really grateful for, and they've been highly effective. But what we found is that students no longer had other things that they can lean on, such as how they dressed, other distractions, laying back a little bit when you're in a crowded room at a career fair to muster up your confidence, to approach the table, or listen and watch and see, the 5 other people before you mess it up, so you won't do that same thing. By the time you get to the table, you've perfected it. We no longer have that. We have your square, it pops up. You have less than 30 seconds to make an impression. So the tip is practice, 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 right? Practice on Zoom all the time by yourself, right? Know your brand, know your value proposition. Try to, condense that and be able to pitch it in 30 seconds or less. Put up like a blurred screen, such as that. I just, here, I'm still.
Have stable internet.
Yeah, I lost my internet. Sorry about that. Put a blurred background when you're actually interviewing. If you're living with other folks, ask them to respect your space and provide that quiet. Again, make sure you have the proper lighting, you have sort of a professional background. Dressed in a collared shirt or just or throw a jacket over it, so on and so forth. It's just those simple things, and practice, practice, practice. And it really makes such the difference.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I think the protector square, I like that phrase. I've never heard that before. So that was good. I know that Alex, you touched on this, and I think some other people also were curious about the career transitions and what are some things you can actually do to prepare for that, how to be thoughtful when you're doing that, especially in this environment. I think it'd be great for you to share some of those experiences you've had and what other people could be doing, especially right now. I think this is a time where people like to transition, see what else is out there for them. So if you can share some of your thoughts, I would love that, Alex.
Yeah, Phyllis called out my major, so I have to represent it. As in, I had a dual major of arts and entertainment management and global marketing. In today's landscape, typically those wouldn't necessarily be the best majors for a younger alumni to come into the workplace with, be it I've had 6 years plus work experience at this point. For me, it was similar to what I was saying earlier. When I'm looking at roles, I'm trying to make a list of what is a need to have versus a want to have versus I can't be at this company if it's, and just segmenting a list and building some buckets. So when I am interviewing or looking, I can easily identify if a role could be a good fit for me. Things like work-life balance, like that might be important to me, but it might not be important to you. Being remote might be, again, like important to me, but you thrive in an office environment outside of the pandemic per se. So really making sure I understand the full scope of a role, including the culture of an organization, is super helpful in my job search. In terms of that pivot that we've been talking about, for me personally, I started in media, but more on the measurement side of that. So my first role out of Pace was at Nielsen. You might be familiar, the TV ratings company. So my job there, I helped local TV stations understand their measurement, their viewers, who was watching, how do they grow their audience and expand. So when I looked at my role there, like I got a lot of great data background, presentation skills, client communication and ownership. And so when moving from role to role, I had to see, what do I like? Do I like pivot tables? Maybe not. So maybe I'll look for a role that's a little less data heavy. I actually do like pivot tables. I'm strange like that. Do I like engaging with customers and clients, or do I want to be more behind the scenes? And so by really leveraging those different aspects of a role, it could help me shift industries, because the skill set and the role could be applicable, right, in different sectors. It just might have a different job name and title. And so you really can't always judge a book by its cover. So if you are doing a LinkedIn search, and here's an example, you're looking for a sales manager, that's something that's going to be pretty universal. But if you look in customer success or account management, sorry, this is more my industry and my scope versus something that's a little more finance savvy. So Gabby, you can fill in there. But the same roles exist at companies. They just have really bizarre names for them, if I'm being honest, with no rhyme or reason. A manager at one company could be a VP at another. So also don't eliminate a role based on title. Really look in the rec or the job description and kind of take your time reading it and make sure you get all the way to the bottom. Sometimes recruiters like to kind of see how engaged you are as a candidate, and sometimes they include details at the bottom of a job description that if you're not reading fully, you'll miss in the recruitment process. Like maybe there's somewhere specific that you need to apply versus just applying on LinkedIn or to bring something up, because they want people who are thorough and do their research and homework. So I would highly recommend taking all of those things with you as you're contemplating a transition into be it a different industry. And if you're looking to change roles, again, find the things that you've done and kind of shape that narrative around it. So if it might have been a smaller part of your job, but you're looking to grow that in your next role and really focus, make sure you tell that story as you've heard today, how you've done it, how you were able to add value. And you can even say, I'm looking to grow. As you can tell, that wasn't my primary function. It was something I enjoyed and was good at. And I'm hoping to, do that more in my next role.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think that's something people do overlook. It's not all titles are transferable in businesses and industry. But I think that at least, LinkedIn, I have not as familiar with the job search and Indeed, but there are ways to do more generic job searches, not just based on title, but sometimes you could do keywords that are in the job description. So I think even just managing people, if you want to be customer facing versus back end, just things of those types of descriptions, take the title out of it. And I think that especially if you're wanting to transition roles or get back into an industry as well, it kind of can eliminate that barrier to entry by just being shell-shocked by what the title or the role is called. So spot on, Alex. I think that was really great advice. Something I know we've talked about a lot of things. I've seen the chat really engaged, which is awesome. I know we have 10 minutes. I want to make this as fruitful as possible. Are there any other dire questions? Raise your hand, put them in the chat. I want to make sure that we're here for you. I know we've talked a lot about how to stand out, how to make a good first impression on these virtual interviews. LinkedIn is key, making sure that you're staying on top of it, being active, connect with all of us. I know someone mentioned, unfortunately, we can't necessarily share the list of attendees. However, if you open up the participants in your screen, screenshot the list of names. Then you can search us all afterwards for LinkedIn, I think is a good workaround. So as I said, let me know if you want to raise your hand now. I just want to make this as the last 9 minutes as fruitful as possible. But if there aren't any dire questions, we'll just keep going with some of the ones we've prescribed already. So if I see no one raising their hands, then I'll just move on. No? All right. I guess the other, big thing, and I'll do this almost kind of to wrap it up in a way, but if you were to give one piece of advice to someone navigating a job search right now, regardless of how long they've been working or how long they've been out of work or change, what would it be? What would be the one thing you want someone to remember on this call? Alex, I think I'm going to start with you just because I see you right in my screen.
Thanks, Gabby. I think for me, the most important thing in a job search is just take ownership. There's going to be variables outside of your control. You're not going to have purview into who else is, being interviewed for a role. How many other candidates are there? Is there an internal candidate who might be an easier segue into a role versus an external candidate? So you only have control over your own actions. So you really need to make the best out of them. I know Matt commented at the beginning of the call about the job landscape and the job market. If you watch the news, you hear about the unemployment rate. You also hear how many new jobs are created. Do not get discouraged. I personally think this is a great time in the market. I see a lot of change, a lot of shift, a lot of pivot. It's also a time where you can reinvent yourself. So that does come back to that ownership. And something Gabby and we hear all the time, we talk about all the time, is your network, is your net worth. So take that with you. We hope to connect on LinkedIn, but when you do connect with people, just like a friendly tip, send a little note about why you want to connect with them or how they know you. Otherwise, it's very easy to get rejected. It seems very basic and intuitive, but it's not. So take that with you too, please.
Perfect. Phyllis, can you go next, or one piece of advice for people?
Sure, I have one piece of advice, and I also want to touch on something that we didn't get a chance to talk about, but I do want to talk about it before we leave because it's that important. My one bit of advice is we talked a lot about resumes and LinkedIn. And Alex said your network, your network is your net worth. Find somebody in your network to take your resume and hand it to that person. Get that referral Matt was talking about so you can stand out. People are more apt to get through the, especially if it's a big popular brand and it's going to be a very popular job and it's in a very competitive market. There's going to be lots of applications, and one way to stand out is for somebody to endorse you, right? Sponsor you. So try, hit your network hard. Find your godparents, find your sponsors, ask them if they will do you this favor. People want to help. People are, some people, not so much, but most people are very, very gracious and very, very helpful, and they want to help people out. Another thing we didn't talk about, Gabriella, and I just really want to share with everybody, diversity, equity, inclusion is huge right now in recruitment. And even if you do not identify with any of these underserved populations, know what's going on, be versed on this. Do the work, be able to speak on it, do the research on the companies you're applying to, see what they're doing, what they're saying, what goals that they're saying. And also when you're talking about value propositions, right? Talk about how you can help them in your interview diversify their organization. That is universally one of the hottest things that is going on right now. As a result of the social justice movement, all of these very large companies, their boards, their senior leadership, their customers are demanding that they do something about it now. Yeah. So know it, do the work, be able to speak on it, and also think about how you can get them where they want to go, and because they're going to have goals in this regard.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Phyllis. Aminata, I hope I say it correctly. I just want Matt to give his one piece of advice, and then I'll get to your question. So Matt,
no
you can give us your one piece.
I totally agree with everyone said. I think here's the question. Why should I hire you? Right? Why should I hire you? If you can't come up with an answer in 30 seconds or less of why I should hire you, then you really got to do some homework. Write it down. Come up with 3, 4, 5 bullets of why I should hire you, right? It's not because of you spent 30 years doing X, or what value are you going to bring to this role, being my employee and this company. And if you can't figure that out, then you got to go back and research it, and then, practice, ask your friend, right? Because that's the elevator speech. That's a 30 seconds. And I've done it to candidates. I've had it done to me, and you got to get it down. And once you get it down, then you got to believe in it, which is a whole other, that's the next topic, believing in yourself. But come up with your elevator speech. Why should I hire you? Why should I marry you if we're on a blind date together? Why should I date you again? I mean, that's what it really comes down to.
So we're supposed to say that on a first date, why we should get married.
Exactly.
That's
Alex, why should we get married?
Love it. Aminata, what's your question?
Yes, I know. Oh, speaking of LinkedIn, I wanted just to ask first, like when you do get a reference, like what is the number of like jobs you should apply within a company? Like no more than, because somebody's saying no more than 2. If you see 2 jobs that you qualify with, should you apply for those within the same company, or that's a no-no? And also my follow-up question is, once you do get a reference from an employee that work in the company, how often should you follow up? Because you don't want to feel like you're bothering them.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I could take the first one. It's really simple. It's going to be on a company by company base and a personal choice. So there's some companies that specify do not apply to more than 2 jobs, and they very much call that out. So don't obviously apply more than 2. There's some companies that don't care. So if you want to apply to a couple more, I mean, that's totally your choice. Maybe Matt, I don't know if you have some insights on what's the best way to follow up with someone who did refer you. What's the best cadence to not be a bother?
Yeah, I think first it's how well do you know that person, right? If they're a connection of a connection, once, thank you for the reference, and then give up, ask for an update. Hey, I applied. This is what I've done. Please keep me in the loop. And then see where it goes. Plus, try to figure out how much influence they have with that role. They may be in that department. They may be in human resources. They may have absolutely no idea. Now, the other question you want to ask them or try to probe is whether they're going to have a financial gain with your employment. Because if they are, then they're probably more prone to give you updates and they really want you to get you the job. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
A lot more companies are giving very sizable referral bonuses because one, it's a lot cheaper than going and finding someone through all these different agencies. And 2 is if you're already working there, you know what it takes to work there. So therefore you'll bring somebody else that knows what it takes to work there. Right. And people want to be connected through people that they know. Right. So, and then they can get a real vouch of what you do. So first, just assess, how well do you know the person? And if you don't know them really well, you can call them all the time. If you don't, then I would, minimal is best. But it's an individual situation.
Awesome. Thank you, Matt. So I know that we are at the top of the hour and I know that people will probably get to dinner depending on where they are. So I want to make sure that I'm going to do a quick recap. And then for those, if you want to sit on, I know we have one other question specifically around resumes passing the screening test. But for those, if you have to jump, I think the biggest takeaway is that all of our panelists have said is get that referral. Network is your net worth. Update your LinkedIn. Work on your square, your virtual square. Know your value prop, your elevator pitch, and ask yourself why I should hire you. I think right now those are like the biggest things, and make sure that you're actually looking at the job descriptions and everything you're seeing. And then lastly, obviously connect with us on LinkedIn. I think I saw already some connections come through, which is awesome. So I love that. But I know that was my recap, but if someone can actually, I don't know if it's Matt or Phyllis, any suggestions on how to customize your resume to really pass the screening test software?
Gabby, I'm kind of upset that my blind date reference didn't make your summary.
Oh, sorry. Blind date. Just imagine you're going on a date with your future spouse.
Exactly. Quick tip on resumes. Go online and just type in resume examples. There's thousands of resume examples. Pick one that suits you. Find someone that does your job. And then there's a lot of things that you'll miss that you go, oh, I do that too. Why didn't I put that in there? And then have someone review it constantly. I am always looking at my resume and I'm always like, oh, wow, that doesn't seem relevant anymore. And then have a couple different resumes depending on the role you're applying for and the industry that you're applying for. But don't keep your resume to the last minute. Oh, someone has a job for me. I got to apply for it. And I got to update my resume because I don't have the last 5 years of what I did. Update your resume every 6 months, whether you're employed or not. It doesn't matter.
Absolutely. That's great. Phyllis, do you have something to add?
Yeah, no, I just said come to career services. We'll teach you how to we call it beat the bots. how to beat the
Perfect.
bots, so we'll make sure that resume is formatted and has all the keywords so you can get through the software and be seen by a human. We call it beating the bots.
Perfect. And just to recap, if you scroll up in the chat, find Marilyn Kaufman's email. You can reach out to her. She is the Alumni Career Services resource at PACE for us. Make sure you connect with Career Services. Make sure you register for the Alumni Series. And it also, a lot of people were asking about this. I saw Sam posted. I think we're going to have someone talking from LinkedIn with a PACE alumni May 11th with Marilyn. So register for that. I think a lot of people would find value on this call. And a next thing is you'll get a post-event survey. Please fill it out. We want to keep this to be more regular, having Lubin alumni connect with each other, or alumni in general, quite frankly. And we want to keep the conversation going. So if there's suggestions that you have for content or the events, please fill out that survey and let us know. We're all in this together. We're all PACE alumni, go setters. I've never said that in my life. I feel like that was the first time I've probably said that, but like, we're all here to help. And I think it'd be great to connect with you all. And, PACE people are just go-getters. So I think that says something about us.
Make sure you have PACE on your LinkedIn, guys. I noticed some of you don't have PACE on your LinkedIn. That will help us find you, and career services and alumni relations to help you more.
Right.
Great tidbit. Awesome. Well, thank you all. If it's East Coast time, enjoy your dinner. Thank you for joining us and having part of the evening with you. We look forward to connecting with you all in the future and hopefully seeing you at future PACE events when the world gets back to normal. So thanks again. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you guys for hosting. Awesome.
Thank you so much,
Thanks
everyone.
all. Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you,
You're
Gabby.
welcome.
Fantastic
Of
job.
course.
Thank you.
Thank
Such
you.
fun.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.